Howdy folks, welcome back to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, the series that just has no end in sight. First thing I wanted to talk about this week was stuff that's amused me on the internet. And the capacity for stupidity that just seems inexhaustible in comments on YouTube videos, and I'm not just talking about mine. Well, there was a good one on mine as well this week that particularly struck in my mind. Somebody had posted, I've been getting quite into the Elite Dangerous alpha test lately, and I've put 2 alpha test videos up. And it's just testing the flight dynamics. Some basic combat scenarios that allows you to fly your ship. And there's only one ship available of the 25 that are slated for release when the game goes live. And just literally fly around and shoot at stuff. It's basic AI, it's just there to test the flight controls. Cue the dumb comments. Well, this game doesn't look very good. I think I'll stick to Star Citizen. Excuse me? Well, first, it's not a game. It's a fucking combat test. And secondly, well, yeah, Star Citizen looks great based on what we've seen of that. It looks like the best walking around a hangar and testing out various seats simulator I've ever seen. And no, of course, I'm not dissing Star Citizen, because it's impossible to judge Star Citizen. The only thing that's out at the moment is the fucking hangar module. All you can do in Star Citizen is walk around a hangar and look at ships. Do I judge the gameplay based on that? Of course not. We haven't seen any of the gameplay. The same goes for Elite Dangerous. We've got the very first iteration of the earliest part of the alpha test that purely allows you to fly around and shoot at stuff. That the AI is basic. So far there's no module damage. There's only one ship of the 25 that are available. But that doesn't stop the stupids from writing it off based on 4 minutes of gameplay from the alpha footage. Another one that amused me was, well, have you seen the trailer for the new Godzilla movie that's coming out next year? If you haven't, I recommend you watch the trailer. It looks really, really good. But, I've been fooled by trailers before. I've seen any number of movies that the trailer looked fantastic, and then you actually see the movie and you realise that the only good things that were in the movie were what were in the trailer. Everything else was dog shit. But I do have high hopes. It's Godzilla, right? It's going to be a big summer action movie. You have to tailor your expectations to the kind of movie it's going to be. No, I don't expect it to win any Academy Awards, but I do expect it to be entertaining. And one of the comments in the YouTube trailer for the new Godzilla movie almost had me in tears. Some guy had said, bless him, obviously very excited about the movie as well. And he's like, oh, I can't wait for this movie to come out. I remember watching the original in the 90s and it was great. The original Godzilla movie from the 1990s. Really? I sometimes just wonder what they teach these kids in school these days. Do me a favour, right? If you're that big a fan of Godzilla, just Google it, right? And prepare to be, prepare to have your horizons expanded. The 1990s, really. I have to confess, I feel somewhat doubtful of your credentials as a Godzilla fan if you think that the first Godzilla movie was the one starring Matthew Broderick and Jean Reno. Might want to check your facts there, son. Speaking of stupidity in YouTube comments, I may have mentioned this previously. If I have, then forgive me. But the most popular video I have ever uploaded was, believe it or not, my very, very first World of Warplanes video. That video has had 500,000 views. Except it hasn't really. I mean, you cannot trust that statistic. 500,000 people have not watched my World of Warplanes video. We're probably talking around about 100, maybe 150,000 people have actually watched the video. The rest of the views are people coming back to the video day after day after day, specifically butthurt World of Warplanes fanboys, to continue the massive, raging flame war that's going on in the comments section of that video, and has been going on in the comments section of that video for 6 months with no sign of stopping. Now, the comments section of that video got so toxic that after 2 weeks of putting the video up, I only go back and have a look to see how it's developing about once every month or so, and I certainly, I'm not going to add any further fuel to the fire by replying to any of the comments. That would just be bad. But I do recommend that if you've got a couple of minutes to spare and you wish to be amused by the depths to which the average internet comment troll can sink, have a look at the comments of that video. It's my very first World of Warplanes vid. In fact, I'll put a link to it in the video description. It is absolutely hilarious. And yet at the same time, utterly, utterly horrific. Speaking of World of Warplanes, in last week's Mingles with Jingles, I included a parody clip of the two Ronnies and John Cleese from That Was the Week That Was in the 1960s, the whole upper class, middle class, lower class hierarchy in relation to joystick users, mouse and keyboard users, and console users, in the way that PC joystick users think that they're better than PC mouse and keyboard users, and PC mouse and keyboard users think that they're better than console users, and so on and so on. And you know, it seemed quite popular. But I think I have to amend the hierarchy. It actually works like this. You've got proper flight sim users, right? People that play DCS simulators, right? They look down their nose at people who play War Thunder, because it's not actually seen, even on full real battle mode, it's not actually seen by the propeller head community as a proper flight sim, believe it or not. And then of course you've got the full real battle users in War Thunder who look down their nose and think they're better than the people that play historical battles. And the people who play historical battles think that they're better than arcade scrubs like me and the majority of people watching. And then of course all of us arcade battle scrubs, we look down our noses at the people playing War Thunder on the PlayStation 4. And the PS4 players can at least content themselves that at least they're not playing World of Warplanes. Alright Jingles, we get it. Enough with the World of Warplanes bashing. And yeah, it is a bit harsh. I mean, World of Warplanes is not a bad arcade flight sim. Well, using the word sim is probably a bit generous. It's not a bad arcade flight game. World of Warplanes' biggest problem was that it came out after War Thunder was already in global beta. And I mean, you know, look at this. Just, I'm getting 60 frames a second on maximum detail settings in War Thunder while recording, and you know, and simultaneously recording and compressing video. And I'm getting 60 frames a second, and it looks fantastic. Playing World of Warplanes, it looks like dog shit, and it struggles to get more than 20 frames a second on the same computer. World of Warplanes' biggest problem was that coming out when it did, with the competition that it had to be very, very good. And it was just alright. And that was its nail in the coffin. It's not a terrible game. It really, really isn't. It's just not nearly as good as it needed to be to compare to, well, this. And there are people out there who adore World of Warplanes, and they have a great time playing it. And they, you know, they have a lot of fun playing World of Warplanes, and that's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, this isn't like, you know, when you were at school, and if you liked Blur, you couldn't be friends with anybody who liked Oasis. Are we all 12 years old or something? You can't like both games, or just liking one game means you have to hate the other one. I mean, come on, grow up, guys. But that's what the comments section of my World of Warplanes videos are like. It's like a bunch of 12-year-olds all throwing their toys out of the pram because somebody dared to dislike their favourite game. In much the same way that people are going to leave negative comments over Elite Dangerous videos just because they are butthurt because I'm not lavishing exclusive attention and praise on Star Citizen. They're both going to be fantastic games. I'm utterly confident of this. You know, you do not have to be exclusive. And sure, there are all sorts of reasons why, you know, concentrating again on the example of Elite and Star Citizen, there's going to be all sorts of reasons why people can't necessarily play both games. Money. I mean, neither of them are going to be free-to-play games. You're going to have to put some money down first in order to be able to buy the games. And maybe you just don't have the time to play, because, you know, these are going to be huge games. They're going to be massive time sinks. And maybe you just don't have the time to play both of them, and that's fine. But just because you picked one does not necessarily mean that you have to, you know, be an arsehole about the other one. You know, grow up, guys. We're not 12 years old anymore. Meanwhile, in World of Tanks, I've been accused of double standards. People are saying I'm hypocritical. When enemy artillery hits me, he's a scumbag. But when our artillery kills an enemy tank, he's a hero. We're all getting confused. Here, let General Melchett explain.
Worse than we'd imagined.
So you see, Blackadder, Field Marshal Haig is most anxious to eliminate all these German spies.
Filthy Hun weasels fighting their dirty underhand war.
Unfortunately, one of our spies
Splendid fellows, brave heroes, risking life and limb for Blighty.
has discovered that the leak is coming from the field hospital.
So you see, no double standard whatsoever. So here's something I thought was interesting. It's not really a new feature. It's been around for a patch or two. It's still in beta. It's here on the World of Tanks website. It's the Hall of Fame. Now, before you get too excited, all it basically is a bunch of data about World of Tanks players, with a bunch of filters that you can use to sort that information. And by default, when you look at this page, it defaults to number of games played. Not in and of itself a particularly interesting statistic. You can see that Evil Joe here has played more games of World of Tanks than anybody else in the world. 105,532 battles. But, you know, it's not a particularly dramatic statistic. But you can sort the information, you can filter it. And here is what is actually quite interesting. If you display 1 day, well, look at that. Somebody has played 845 games in 1 day. What the hell? That's enough to grind out the XP for a tier 10 tank destroyer in 1 day. He's earned 306,000 experience in a day. Holy shit. I mean, he's been awful. He's only got 223 kills in the 845 games he's played, but I suspect he's going for quantity rather than quality. Some of these stats are amazing. The thing is, though, isn't that quite sad? The fact that the most efficient way of advancing and getting ahead in World of Tanks is just being really, really bad a lot. I mean, what kind of message does that send to people who try to do well in every game they play? That you're just wasting your time. You know, if you want to get ahead, just queue a tank, jump into battle, drive straight towards the enemy, fire a couple of shots off, die, then repeat the process. Keep doing that in every tank that you have, and then when you've gotten to the end of your garage, you just go back to the first tank, because it'll be out of battle by then, and just do it all over again. Suck in every game you play. Doesn't matter. Just do some damage, die, jump into the next tank. Keep doing it often enough, you'll be earning more XP than somebody who actually tries to win the games they play. And it's like I've always said, World of Tanks is a game where all you have to do to get to tier 10 is just lose enough games and anybody can drive a tier 10 tank. But here's the thing, all joking aside, right, looking at this seriously for a second, what's the point? I mean, that is a metric butt ton of XP to earn in a day. You keep that up for a couple of days, you're at tier 10. But you got there by sucking huge amounts. And now you're at tier 10, you still suck. You've unlocked all of these tanks, and you don't have clue number 1, how to drive any of them. This could explain a lot about the average state of random battle team members in World of Tanks. But the statistics available on this page, I mean, they're not just number of games played. And the amount of filters that are available vary depending on the time period that you're choosing to look at. 1 day, 7 days, 4 weeks, or the overall lifetime of an account. Now bear in mind, this isn't just people who have downloaded World of Tanks, played 12 games and thought, this isn't for me, and never played it again. You must have played a certain number of games to even show up on the Hall of Fame. For the overall lifetime of the account stats, you have to have played 1,000 games. To show up in the 1 day period, you have to have played 5 games in the previous day, and so on and so on. So I'm not going to show up on the 1 day period because I haven't played World of Tanks since Thursday. I only really play 2 days a week. But if we have a look at who's done the most damage in a day, get a load of this. That is spectacular. This fella here, Hun Hero. Right, remember, in fact we'll go back to games played. Remember, Jabacho here has played 845 games in 1 day and done almost 200,000 damage. If you sort it by who's done the most damage, look at that. Hun Hero, 170 games played, which is still a lot of games to play in a day. Almost 500,000 damage. Holy shit. And 202 kills. That's some seriously good gameplay. If you look at the guy in second place, Uniz651, he's played less games, 132. He's got more kills, 230. And he's almost done the same amount of damage. I mean, that's spectacular. Now, if you expand the filter to show people who've played in the last 7 days, in fact, if you click here and show About Ratings, it actually tells you what you need to qualify to show up. So, for the last 7 days, you have to have played 20 battles in the last 7 days to even show up on the table. And I start to show up here because I've played 20 battles in the last 7 days. And again, and as you can see, as you sort it by different time periods, different options start appearing. You've got things like the number of frags per battle, the experience per battle, for example, sorted by experience per battle. Now, this does include premium account, but it does not include bonuses for first win of the day, special events, that sort of thing. This fella here, Agonize, over 23 games in the course of the last week, he's earned an average of 1,449 experience per battle. Now, because I show up on this chart, you can click Go to Your Position, and you can see that my average experience per battle, and I've had some terrible games over the course of the last week, but I've had some good ones as well, is, well, 700. It's half of what the guy on the top is. And yet, that is better than 91.5% of everybody who plays World of Tanks. That's just how mind-bogglingly bad most people are at playing this game. At the same time, if you expand the ratings open a little, and you can look at relative stats rather than absolute stats. I mean, you know, the amount of games played, you just throw enough shit at the screen and eventually, you know, some of it's going to stick. Anybody can play a lot of games, but doing well is a different matter entirely. So you've got stats like damage per battle, frags per battle, average XP per battle. If you were to sort it by the average amount of damage per battle, this fella over here, Bodybuilder 1945, is doing an average of 4,343 damage per battle. And he's played a lot of games as well. This isn't just a freak statistic where he's played 20 games and had a good game streak. He's played 366 games over the last 7 days, and he's doing phenomenally well in them. And he's not just one of those guys, and you'll see them quite easily if you check certain statistics on this Hall of Fame, that there are a lot of players out there who basically re-roll a new account, and they buy themselves a KV5 and an IS6, for example, and they just play 200 or 300 games in both of those tanks, convert all of the XP, earn a butt ton of credits, then buy themselves an AMX 5100 and just do tier 8 tank company battles in the AMX 5100. Maybe they'll also buy an FCM 50T just to train a crew for the AMX 5100, and then that's it. They've only ever played 4 tanks. Or people who are professional low-tier seal clubbers who've done exactly the same thing, but they just buy a couple of tier 2 and 3 premium light tanks, kit them out, and just do nothing but constantly club seals, run around just raping people in low-tier games. This guy here, Bodybuilder 1945, not one of those. Check this out. 24,764 games played. Good player. 57.66% win ratio. And Average experience per battle, 200 XP higher than me. You know, he is good. Look at that, 439 Top Guns, 42 Radley Walters, 6 Pools medals, 13 crucial contributions, 233 Brothers in Arms. You know, he's a good player. And I just think this is fascinating. And again, you know, if you go to my position, there I am with 1,272 average experience damage per battle. And I've had some shitty games over the course of the last week. I've had plenty of games where I've done 0 damage and just died horribly. But I've had games where I've done like 4,000 damage as well, so it evens out. And better than 88.57%. Once again, it just goes to show you how mind-bogglingly bad most people are at playing this game. Speaking of professional seal clubbers, if you want to spot them, it's really, really easy. You just look at overall lifetime of account, and you go to the win ratio. There it is. Victories per battles, wins per battles. And generally speaking, anybody with a higher than 70% win rating is a professional seal clubber. Let's put that theory to the test, shall we? Here he is, General of Panzer Troops. He's played 1,100 games. And he has 62 Top Guns in those 1,100 games. This is starting to look suspicious. What vehicles has he played? And there it is. Whole bunch of light tanks, none of them higher than Tier 3. And 1 tank destroyer, the Panzerjäger 1, and a Tier 2 artillery. Let's have a look at another one. How about this guy? Scarlett Johansson. 2,700 games played. 479 Top Guns. Yeah, this is starting to look very, very suspicious. Let's see. Oh, this is looking even more obvious. He's played 2 light tanks, an M2 at Tier 2, and he's played 2,300 games in that. And then a T-71. Medium tanks, a T-69, heavy tanks, Churchill 3. Yeah. So he's basically bought himself a Churchill 3 to grind out XP. He's bought himself an M2 light tank to rape people in low tiers, played a metric butt-ton of games in that. And then he's converted that crew to his T-71. And now he's just running around raping people in the T-71. And the free XP he ground out on the Churchill 1 and the M2 is basically gone into financing a T-69 to do exactly the same thing. They're so easy to spot. So anyway, there you go. The World of Tanks Hall of Fame. There's some fascinating stuff on here. There really, really is. You could spend hours browsing the stats here and just laughing your ass off at the results. So have a look. You know, see how you compare. You can go to your position, providing you qualify for any of the filters. You can also see how you compare against your friends. In fact, let's have a look. Oh wow. Oh wow. I'm bad. I'm so bad. Wow, no. Oh dear. Number of games played. Quickie baby. Number of frags. Quickie baby. Damage done. Quickie baby. Maximum experience per battle. Circumflexes. Win ratio. Circumflexes. Hit ratio. Quickie baby. Experience per battle. Quickie baby. So there you go. Oh, I can see a flame war starting in the comments over that one. What have I started? Right, anyway, let's look at something else. Actually, you know, speaking about statistics like win rates in games like World of Tanks, this has been actually quite a bit of a hot topic in the last couple of Mingles with Jingles. I've had numerous questions from people who have asked the question along the lines of, Jingles, do you think it's fair to judge people by their win rating? Well, it depends what you mean by judge people. I'm certainly not going to judge a person based on how often they win in a computer game. I mean, you know, that's just ridiculous. But I do firmly believe, and there is statistical evidence that does back this up, that under certain circumstances, with enough games played, in a large majority of cases, win rating is a good assessment of how good a player you are at World of Tanks. If you've played at least 7 or 8,000 games, if you don't play in platoons, if you just play random battles over a large enough sample of games, all of the other statistics, all of the other factors, sucky teammates, wrong tank for the map that you're driving on, all things like that even out. And the only constant in all of those games that you've played is you. However, there are exceptions. I am one of those exceptions. For the last 7 or 8 months, I have basically not played World of Tanks unless I'm in a platoon of other players who are a lot better than me. So my win rating of nearly 57% is a false assessment of how good a player I am. I'm not a 57% win rate player. I'm a 53, 54% win rate player playing in a platoon of 60 and 60, 63% win rate players. So you can't judge me on my win rate. My win rate is better than I am. And there are other exceptions. There are light tank drivers, people who predominantly play nothing but light tanks. It's ridiculously hard to carry a team of scrubs if you're driving a light tank. There's the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can scout and spot all the targets for your team, but you can't kill them all yourself. Right? Light tank drivers tend to be more at the mercy of their team than medium, heavy tank or tank destroyer drivers. And so a light tank driver with a low win rate is not necessarily a bad player. Because there's only so much you can do in a light tank, regardless of how well you drive that tank and you do your job of scouting and spotting targets. You're very much at the mercy of the rest of your team. And that brings me on to a very, very good question that I received in the last Mingles with Jingles from Kabuki Katsumi, who plays on the North American forums. And it was quite a long question, and it was this. For quite some time, he's been known on the North American forums for his tactical know-how. He's posted some very detailed and very well-received battle tactics on how to best utilise certain tanks or exploit enemy weaknesses. The problem is he finds that for every person that thanks him, and some clans even use his tactics in their Clan Wars games, but for every person that thanks him, that there's always people that say, you're a 47% win rate scrub, shut up, you don't know anything. And this is actually a really, really good point, and, it's another exception to the rule. Just because you can't do something yourself does not mean that you don't know how it should be done. I've never made a movie in my life, but I know a shit film when I see one. I am not a novelist, but I know garbage literature when I read it. And by the same vein, even if you're not a 70% win rate player, that doesn't mean you don't know how a tank should be driven or how a battle should be fought. Right? People have different skills in different areas. Great generals do not necessarily also make great foot soldiers. And there's all sorts of reasons for why you might not do well at World of Tanks. Maybe your hand-to-eye coordination isn't that good. Maybe you get flustered when you're under pressure. There's any number of reasons that might mean that your individual performance driving a tank is not as good as other people. But that doesn't mean you don't know how the tank should be driven, or what tactics should be used on the map. Sitting there in the cold light of day, reviewing the replay after the battle, you could be watching and thinking, yep, I did that wrong there, yep, I did that wrong there, I shouldn't have done that, I should have done this. And be able to criticise your performance, in an intelligent way. But for one reason or another, you're just never able to translate that into effective play on the battlefield, in the heat of the action. Doesn't mean you don't know what you're talking about. And anyway, 47% isn't that bad. It's only just below average. Don't forget, the average in World of Tanks is actually 48%. So 47% is certainly nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, there's room for improvement. But, you're not really bad at World of Tanks unless you've got 45% and below. And win rates are relevant to the discussion anyway, since we're not talking about how many games the guy's won. We're talking about his opinions and advice on how to play. Don't diss him just because you don't like his win rating. Diss him because you disagree with what he's saying, not because you're not prepared to listen to what he's saying because you don't like an arbitrary number associated with his account. If he's talking sense, he deserves to be listened to. His win rating's got nothing to do with it. I'm pretty sure I could kick General George S. Patton's ass in a game of World of Tanks, but I wouldn't like to command an army against him. Speaking of tanks, Gaijin have upset a lot of people with the way they've handled the second phase of the closed beta of War Thunder's ground forces. The second stage of the closed beta is due to start very, very soon, like within a week. And you can basically buy your way in. And this has pissed off a lot of people. When they announced the closed beta, they also announced that you could buy some tank starter packs, the cheapest of which was 2,000 Golden Eagles, which is the equivalent of nearly €50. That's the price of a full-price AAA game to get you a shitty little low-tier premium tank and buy your way into the closed beta. Ridiculously expensive. I would not recommend anybody do it. I've done it because I kind of have a responsibility of showing you guys the gameplay. Well, you know, once the NDA's been lifted. But people have asked Jingles, do you think it's... No, it's not worth it. Absolutely not worth it. Just to get into a closed beta? No chance. The amount of money they were asking was just shocking. Now, you might say, well, Jingles, how is that any different from handing over £200 to get into the closed alpha of Elite Dangerous? It's completely different. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Jingles, how is that any different from handing over £200 to get into the closed alpha of Elite Dangerous, or spending hundreds of dollars on pre-order ships for Star Citizen? It's completely different. War Thunder is a finished game. Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous are crowd-funded Kickstarter projects. Some of them have a hell of a lot of money, more money than others, but War Thunder is a finished game. Okay, it's a work in progress. They're constantly developing it and upgrading it, but it's finished. No, oh, Jingles, how can you say that? War Thunder's in open beta. Fuck off. Any game where you are paying a subscription fee to play is not a beta test. Alright, and if you're buying premium account time in War Thunder, you are paying a subscription to play the game. It's a finished product that they are constantly adding new content to, in exactly the same way World of Warcraft is a finished product that they are constantly adding new content to. World of Warcraft gets major content patches every 6 months. It gets expansions every year and a half. They're constantly changing the way the character classes work. They're constantly changing the abilities and the skill packages of the character classes in exactly the same way that Gaijin are constantly changing the way the flight models work and are introducing new aircraft and are pushing out new content patches like ground forces. Right? It's not a beta test anymore, and anybody who thinks it is deluding themselves. I can go onto Steam and buy Call of Duty Ghosts for the same price that they're asking for the cheapest of these premium tank packages to get access to the second phase of the ground forces closed beta. I don't recall World of Warcraft demanding you hand over €50 to be able to get into the closed beta of the next content patch for that game. You know, it's a very, very cynical cash grab, and I do not recommend anybody buys those tank packages. I have bought them, but I kind of have a responsibility to be able to show you guys the ground forces footage once the non-disclosure agreement has been lifted, and I can put the videos on YouTube. You know, showing you guys videos of these games is what I do. So, yeah, I felt like I had to buy them, but I begrudged every penny I spent. And on that bombshell, he said, channeling Jeremy Clarkson, that brings this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles to a close. Coming up next week, we're going to the Fleet Air Arm Museum at Yeovilton on Tuesday, and we've got the entire day in the museum. They've closed it. We're going to be the only people there, full access to absolutely everything. There's going to be some fantastic video out of that. A little birdie tells me that I may also very soon be able to get my hands on some bonus codes for World of Tanks, including some very, very rare Tier 3 premium light tanks that you may have heard of. But I've already said too much. More on that as the situation develops. As always, folks, take care on that battlefield. Watch your six. Whatever game you're playing, have fun playing it. And I will catch you next time.